Welcome back to another Pauper Paradise. It's Mike and Dash here, and we're doing yet another deck tech. Today we've got actually one of my kind of pet projects and one of my favorites, Mono Black Suicide Black. We're doing a lot of damage to ourselves in this particular build.
Are you feeling okay? Are you happy with life? Okay.
No, yeah, okay. I'm okay. I'm super excited. It's a super aggressive black deck where you just want to beat down, and you have creatures that are 2/2s for 1s or 3/3s for 2, but they do damage to you in place of their higher stats.
Right. It seems like a really low end deck.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have a lot of cheap creatures here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So let's start with your creatures because it looks like that's
the creatures.
The main part of the deck.
So there's 8 2-drops. Technically 10 if you count Vault Skirge as a 2-drop. Because I would, just because you're only going to play one for it. You don't care about life in this deck, generally speaking. But the 1-drops of choice are Carnophage and Vampire Lacerator. Carnophage is a 2/2 for 1 for a single black, and during your upkeep, you pay a life or you tap Carnophage. So there you go, you got a 2/2 for 1, but you're paying 1 in your upkeep. And then Vampire Lacerator, it's kind of similar. It's a 2/2. You'd think it would have flying. It looks like it has flying, but it doesn't. It would be too good, I guess. But at the beginning of an upkeep, you lose life unless your opponent has less than 10. Has 10 or less, pardon me. So very often you're losing the first couple points, but when your turns are 1-drop 1-drop or 1-drop 1-drop 1-drop, you're going to get them down to very low life totals very quickly. Following up, there's 4, 8, 12, maybe 14 2-drops depending on what you want to count them. The ones I'm saying maybe are Porcelain Legionnaire. I actually really like this card. It's not black at all. It's 2 and then a white Phyrexian mana. It's a 3/1 first strike. But gosh, 3 first strike power is so huge in this format. It's so hard for decks to deal with this card. That being said, you don't want the full 4 because paying the life to be able to play this card is sometimes a little bit much. But the 2 of just at your top end and being able to swing in is really good. But for the actual 2-drops. 4 Wretched Anurids, it's 1 and a black, it's a 3/3. Whenever another creature comes into play, you lose a life, so it's like the opposite of the Soul Sister. But it's a 3/3 for 2. The Rakdos Shred-Freak, which it's the black-red hybrid mana, but you're only playing it for black. It's a 2/1 haste, which is just pretty good in this deck. And then the 4 Dauthi Slayers. It's a 2/2 for black, and it has Shadow. It has Shadow and attacks each turn if able. Shadow basically means can't be blocked and can't block and can't be blocked except by creatures with Shadow.
Right.
And this is it's virtually 2/2 for 2 unblockable attacks each turn.
Right. So if you kind of imagine them kind of stuck in the Shadow realm where only Shadow creatures exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're kind of like sliding in and out of this like Shadow existence, and they can basically only deal with creatures in that. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
And then the last card actually this is the top end of the deck. It's 2 Crypt Rats. It's 2 and a black, which is expensive, I guess, for this deck. A 3-mana card. Or 3-mana creature just in general for a 1/1, so by itself not that good. But it has the abilities for X, so tap X mana. Crypt Rats deals X damage to each creature and each player, spend only black mana. Well, the black mana part is no problem considering the deck's mono black. And this is kind of the top end finisher. If you've gotten to 3 mana to be able to cast the rats, maybe you'll have 4 on the next turn or 5 or whatever. But even just 3, you're beating down with your Carnophages, Vampire Lacerator, and whatever creatures. So this is kind of the black maybe lightning bolt or black fireball just stapled onto a creature. It's kind of rough just because they have to deal with it. You could very well kill yourself because it says each creature and each player. Mm-hmm. But by the time you're activating this, you're not going to activate it if you have less life than your opponent, I guess. And odds are, sometimes even just doing this for 2, when you have like your Wretched Anurids or whatever, you can still kind of beat in. Or even sometimes just 1 to be able to clear the board for your attackers. Sometimes, I've had to do that before.
Right.
So it's pretty good. But it's just tons of creatures and then, attack.
So, wow, it looks like, can this deck run off 1 mana? Let's say if you get like maybe 2 1-drops and a just banking on getting that second.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the card that I actually want to look at is Dark Ritual. You might be thinking like, wait, what are you doing? This seems so out of place. Dark Ritual is actually one of the most broken cards in the deck, just because turn one, the deck's only playing 18 lands, and one of which is a cycling land. So 17, black sources total, and the curve is super low, so I guess it makes sense. But if you're able to like turn one Dark Ritual and like triple 1-drop, you're so ahead in those kind of games that it's bonkers. Even if you go turn one Dark Ritual into like 1-drop, 2-drop, like your opponent doesn't even know what to do, because I mean just 4 power on turn 1 and you're attacking, and they play their tap land. And you're just like, okay, cool, come at me. Like it's pretty bonkers to be able to do that.
Right. So it kind of just explosive starts here with Dark Ritual. What are some of the obviously you just mentioned the pros with Dark Ritual. What are some of the negatives of it?
I mean, it's obviously a terrible card to draw late, but whatever. I mean, that being said, if you do have a Crypt Rats and you draw one a Dark Ritual, you've automatically moved up the curve, I guess, if you will, and you can Crypt Rats drain them for even more. It's not the best, but that's why the deck plays 4, because you do want to draw it early, and having it in your opening hand is very, very good. But drawing it late is always kind of not the greatest.
And knowing that Daze is in the format, have you seen that one island in play?
I just jam. Just jam. This deck you kind of can't really afford to hold back. You're doing a lot of damage to yourself, and you want to put your opponent constantly on the back foot. So you have to be super aggressive. Like Wretched Anurid, the opposite of the Soul Sister. Like when they play creatures, you lose life. When you play creatures, you lose life. It's that kind of deck. You just have to be super aggressive, and you make them have it. It's one of those checks. Like, I guess, sure, if you can afford to play around it, but oftentimes you're not going to be able to. That being said, if they like Daze or counterspell your Dark Ritual, you're like, okay, cool. I'm kind of ahead in that transaction still.
Right.
Most of the time, any counterspells that they have, like, they're not really coming ahead. The reason counterspell's so good, blue counterspell is you can be really ahead on the mana advantage, but like if they're countering your Carnophage, you're like, okay, cool, whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
That's fine.
So you just kind of just go for it. Green light, don't hold back.
Yeah.
So tell me about Wretched Anurid. Has this guy been too much of a problem with it?
I mean, these cards are definitely scary. Like you have to be prepared to you're probably like some amount of games you might just die because just like you weren't able to get those couple points in, and they're just like play creature, block, and you you very literally suicide your creatures in just because you can't you attack just so that they block your Wretched Anurid and it dies because you want to be able to play another creature to do something else, or you want to play a Vault Skirge and maybe you have a Bonesplitter, which by the way, Bonesplitter, a lot of decks only play maybe one of these one copy, but Bonesplitter is super good, especially in this deck, just getting those couple extra points. That's why I've gone up to 3. But like bone splintering up a Vault Skirge is just like, that's game. Like being able to gain any incidental life is super good. But you just kind of want the higher toughness, or higher power rather, in some of these lower drop creatures.
So a really good hand would be like what, a Swamp, Dark Ritual, Carnophage,
Swamp, Dark Ritual, and then anything.
Right.
Yeah, Swamp, Dark Ritual, like 1 land, Dark Ritual, and then like any number of creatures. I'm like more than happy with that kind of hand. Because if I have the 2-drops, I'm going to play 1-drop, 2-drop, and then the next turn I'll play another 1-drop and just keep going. And all of my, I actually kind of want to talk about the removal spells. Interestingly enough, I'm only playing a couple. I just want to beat down with my creatures. You don't see many Geth's Verdict, but it's black for an instant. Target player sacrifices a creature and loses a life. I'm not playing Chainer's Edict because I don't ever plan on getting to 7 mana to be able to flash it back. But whereas Geth's Verdict, I just want to clear the way. I turn 1 Dark Ritual and I play a couple 2-drops, and maybe they play 1 creature to be able to chump block. But if I Geth's Verdict and just get rid of their one thing preventing me from doing a couple damage, even just like for 1 turn just to be able to get those couple points in, and then I Crypt Rats, like it's super good. Plus, the incidental they lose a life is really good.
And that 1 life can mean a lot in these kind of decks where, you know how, what is the one where it bounces a creature?
Bouncing creature.
For one blue that they make.
Oh yeah, Vapor Snag.
It's kind of the same cycle of this.
Except Geth's Verdict, especially in this deck, is better. Just like having them being able to sacrifice it so that they don't replay it.
It gets rid of it permanently. Costs 1 extra, but still, that 1 extra
it's
point
not
of
even
damage
bad.
It can mean a lot. So
and then Disfigure is the other removal spell of choice. -2/-2. Oftentimes they're not going to be able to. If they get to the point in the game where they're playing their big creatures that Disfigure doesn't kill, then odds are I've probably already lost. But Disfigure, because it's so super cheap, it gets rid of those the smaller things that are gonna probably want to chump block and me just be able to get a couple points of damage in. And then I just play 1 Sign in Blood just for that's kind of rounding out the 60th slot. I don't mind losing the life to draw some cards. I generally don't want to be playing this effect because I want to just dump my hand as fast as I can and just attack.
Okay, I'm kind of troubled here. There's a lot of one-ofs I'm questionable of. This being one of them, just a one of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it could be. It could have been I guess maybe I don't think I wanted it to be a 4th Bonesplitter. I could have had it be a 3rd of any of these creatures. Right. The way I look at it is it's kind of that incidental spell where I'd be okay drawing it late in the game because maybe I can finish them off, or if I do need that card advantage. There are a number of decks, that kind of want to try and go to the late game where this is kind of a very slight hedge against them. It could very well be more, but I like it actually as a one-of, interestingly enough, just because being able to force in those last couple points and the fact that, unlike Knight's Whisper, it can actually target the opponent and kill them. I really like it.
It could be a last resort shock.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't mind it as a one-of. It might seem a little bit weird, but I'm kind of a fan of it.
Yeah, I could have seen you going 5 Dark Rituals. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe another Disfigure or something. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting choice, and it seems like it's kind of that catch in the late game. You'll draw.
Yeah, and if I never end up seeing it, that's fine with me too.
Right.
I'm not all upset about it.
You don't want to spend your second turn playing this right off.
Yeah, I don't. I generally don't really want to be playing this card. Right. I want all of my cards to either be creatures that get in damage or a way to get rid of their chump blockers.
Right.
I mean, I guess the Dark Ritual is the only exception to that, but it's so good and it enables the most broken starts that I think it's a must-have, a must-include in these decks.
Or you kind of sandbag it for if you do get to the top deck game, you can hopefully just draw 2 Carnophages with 4 mana or something if you get flooded a little bit, or a Carnophage and a Bonesplitter, or just 2 cards, and it looks like 2 cards that can explode you again, maybe get you off the gate. So I was kind of wondering about these one-ofs, but it looks like the mad scientist over here with the Suicide Black had an answer for that. So.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the last cards that we didn't talk about, just Unearth, just a 1 mana. Return a creature from your graveyard to play if its converted mana cost is 3 or less, and that's literally the entire deck.
Basically, so a reanimation for anything. Crypt Rats.
I guess it cycles. It cycles as well if I haven't killed anything. But odds are the notion of Suicide Black, I'm attacking. Not only is I'm taking my life total damage in, but oftentimes I'm just attacking in with everything, and they can choose to trade off some of their creatures, and then I could just unearth it back. Right. It's really cool when I get to unearth back a Rakdos Shred-Freak, just because it has haste. That's always awesome.
It's kind of unexpected, and hopefully the last 2 points of damage.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's the main deck. On to the sideboards here.
Yeah. So, this is just a hot mess. I love it.
Yeah.
When you're playing a monocolored deck, odds. I mean, just by the nature of it being monocolored, you're a little bit more limited, but it kind of allows you to focus in a little bit more. I have a super heavy discard package against the various, control and mid-rangey type decks that are trying to get out there. So I can even get rid of part of the suicide aspect of the deck and turn into a bigger mid-range deck where I'm just focusing on discard spells. And there's tons of them. I've got 4 Hymn to Tourach, which is I could power those out with Dark Ritual. So 4 Hymn to Tourach where they discard cards at random, and that just wrecks control decks. 3 Duress, once again, just wrecking the control decks. 2 Ravenous Rats. It's 1 and a black for a 1/1, and then when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. It's not random or anything, but the fact that I have a discard spell on a creature, it's pretty good. And it forces them, you know, I have so many creatures anyway that they're gonna be wanting to use the removal. So if the Ravenous Rats kind of gets in maybe for a couple points,
yeah, because
it's worth it.
After a wave of Duress and maybe hymns, you want to have your discard start doing damage too.
Yeah, exactly. Plus it's super cheap. 2 mana is where the deck kind of wants to be. The only thing that costs 3 is the Crypt Rats, and those are like I said the top end. 2 more. We've got a Liliana Specter. It's 1 black. It's a 2/1 flyer. And when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. This is kind of against the. It's good against control decks. It's a little bit on the top end, so. That's why it's only a 1/of, but similarly to the Ravenous Rats, it's a creature that makes them discard, but also having the evasiveness of a flyer, just being able to go over the top, especially if they're a little bit more focused on their ground game, is pretty good.
So it's a little bit more of kind of a better Ravenous Rats for 1 more?
Kind of. But like if I want to be able to get in with flyers, if I've seen that they're playing a more mid-range deck that doesn't really have ways to deal with the flyers outside. I mean, sure, everything dies to removal, whatever. I don't even consider that an option, but or a reason why it's bad. But
is this the result of you just super gluing wings on Ravenous Rats and giving it a spear?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
There you go. Awesome, sweet.
Yeah, it's you add an extra black mana and then you just staple wings onto Ravenous Rats.
Getting kind of crazy in the lab there. Yeah,
I try to. And then the last discard type value creatures, Okiba-Gang Shinobi. This one's fun. It's 3 black, which you're never really casting it for, but it's a 3/2 with ninjutsu. So if I attack with a creature, I can pay 3 and a black and that creature goes unblocked to ninjutsu the Shinobi in, and that just means I return that creature back to my hand, and that now the Shinobi is attacking and unblocked. And whenever the Shinobi deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards.
Wow.
So once again, kind of against some of these more mid-rangey and control-y decks, the games are just going to go longer just because their sideboards are going to be built in such a way. And I can play with some of the numbers like that. I can be reducing the number of Wretched Anurids just because they're going to be playing creatures as well. And the Dauthi Slayers are pretty bad in matches where I think I might be wanting to block. So I can bring in something something like that where they might not necessarily block and force them to discard cards.
Right.
So just tons and tons of discard in the sideboard. That's all just the package against
super heavy
control-y decks and
discard.
more mid-range decks as well.
So you took the option of taking the advantage from the sideboard to discard rather than draw, which makes sense because it's stacked onto some creatures, Duress and Hymn to Tourach, very powerful cards.
Yep.
And the last 4, it looks like a huge chunk of your sideboard for a discard. The last 4, just
kind of randoms, additions to the deck. One more Sign in Blood, 1 more Unearth, 1 more Disfigure, and 1 actually Victim of Night. Victim of Night, just because. I'll talk about why I wanted to add the numbers, but Victim of Night is black. It's an instant destroy target non-vampire, non-werewolf, non-zombie creature. I could have had Doomblade in the deck. Generally, Doomblade is your consideration for mana. But since this is mono black, this is effectively just better Doomblade. And there's some amount of black creatures that are playing black creatures that Doomblade can't hit.
Right.
But there's not many vampire, werewolf, and zombie creatures that
aren't black, right?
Yeah, aren't black that I'm worried about hitting. I'm worried about running into, and odds are if they're playing a heavy zombie deck, I guess if a tribal thing like that exists, then my removal spells are probably going to be the sort where I'm okay anyway.
Yeah.
Just an extra Disfigure against some of the smaller, lower to the ground aggressive decks.
Right.
Just because like I said, Wretched Anurid, if they're aggressive and they want to beat me down, Wretched Anurid's kind of a liability in those matchups, but Disfigure is the perfect kind of catch-all card. It kills most everything that I need it to kill. And like I said before, if I'm getting to the point where Disfigure isn't really killing it, then, well, I'm probably not winning that game.
Awesome. So yeah, it looks like we have the whole shebang here. It looks like a explosive deck.
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, I would not want to be going against this with a bunch of just black creatures coming out, swinging axes and smash their face.
Yeah, for real. The thing about the sideboard is theoretically in some matchups you could sideboard close to all 15 cards. You could sideboard 13 of the cards.
Right.
12 or 13 of the cards in certain matchups if you want to like turn this into like a truly mid-range deck, which that's definitely conceivable. You side out some number of like Wretched Anurids, and like despite Rakdos Shred-Freak being really the 2-power haste, it's really good. Like having 1 toughness is a little bit rough, and things like Electrickery, even though people might not necessarily bring it in against me. Electrickery can, hit a bunch of them, and there's the -2/-2 Echoes, Decay of Echoes or whatever. Yeah, it's -2/-2, and like it kills everything with the same name. Like that really hurts the deck.
Right. Everything pretty much short of the Wretched Anurid. I mean, this deck does have a high risk, high reward, though.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the point, and I think that's built into like its name, the Suicide Black deck. Like you're okay doing damage to yourself because you want the game to be over by like turn 4.
Right. So the whole point is to do more damage to them before you do to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like we see this in modern formats right now. Like what Death Shadow is really big. Like that.
Death Shadow.
Gosh,
yes.
if Death Shadow could be played, geez, it would be bonkers in this deck.
I know. Well, one of these days they'll make it a comment.
Oh yeah, no, please don't.
So, one more question. Would you recommend this deck to a beginner player or someone starting out?
Probably not, no. Despite what seems like relatively straightforward about this deck, oh cool, I want to play a bunch of like 1 and 2 drops and attack. The deck actually requires a bit more thinking and planning out your turns than you would necessarily give it credit for just by looking at it. Because you're operating, the deck can operate off 1 and 2 mana, but because you're operating off such low land counts, and like you often want to be playing multiple things a turn, you have to be able to sequence like your removal spells appropriately and like know when to play your creatures. And sometimes it's incorrect to like untap your Carnophage. Like sometimes you want to keep it tapped so you don't lose that life. Sometimes you want to hold off on the Wretched Anurids because their hand might be gas. So.
And sometimes these guys do have to block.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you do have to block. You don't ever really want to be in the position of having to do that, but sometimes you just not with this deck at all. But sometimes you just have to, and it's actually not, like I said, it's not as straightforward as you would think at first, especially with how diverse the Pauper metagame is. There's so many different types of decks. You kind of have to have an idea of what the decks. At least what the other deck's game plan is, so that you can, develop your first 1 or 2 turns. Because from what I've seen just by playing this deck, playing a spell or a creature out of sequence or doing things out of sequence in the first couple of turns can like make or break this deck.
I like it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ashley. Tons of fun, and we'll be seeing you next time in Pauper Paradise. See ya.